We want to invest in sustainable businesses.
Impact on the bottom line.
Well, I don't have to pitch it to the partners because they believe in it.
How fast you can burn the money we gave you.
You know, these practices accessible to everyone in the world.
To those who don't know you yet, Charlie Hartwell is a managing partner at Bridge Builders, and it's a unique investment group because it's a mix between VC firm and a cooperative. Can you tell us a little bit more on your background?
So Bridge Builders is a collaborative of currently 10 investors that came together 9 years ago. There were 3 original partners that wanted to see if there was anything best to help bring the science of contemplative practice to scale. And the science seemed to be getting good enough where there might be ways to help bring the science, into the world through investment. So we formed a collaborative as opposed to a fund, because the partners that I work with are not wanting to just be passive investors. They want to see how they can use their networks, their capital, their wisdom and their background to help make a difference in this space. So we all thought it would be sort of more fun to work in a collaborative where on any given deal a partner can say, I want to be in this deal, but I don't want to be in that deal. And so that there would be as much ability to collaborate where there was mutual interest and not just the passive nature of what a fund is.
Well, that sounds like a very new age approach towards venture investing that gives more, I guess, hands-on ability to participate with the team. So this way also increasing the potential of success. I guess that's the goal, right?
And I define success, in a couple of different ways. And yes, I think when we can bring together the wealth of experience and the connections that our partners have and entrepreneurs to help scale their businesses, then we have an impact both in the change we can create in the world, the ways that we can help enrich the lives of the team, through being good partners, and also the ways that we can, generate investment returns. So I look at it as the potential for win-wins, or create invitations for deeper levels of consciousness in the world. And at the same time, to have the reward of doing that and then having, financial rewards as well.
You mentioned an impact, and I know a lot of people think of especially within corporations, they think of an impact as an impact on the bottom line. But we also know that impact right now, it's like a trending word and it's been interpreted differently. How do you understand impact, and how do you pitch it to your LPs, or in your case, I guess, partners of the collaborative?
Well, I don't have to pitch it to the partners because they believe in it. And each of them wanted to join this group because of that. Can I just give an example of an investment? And I think that will sort of help prove what I'm talking about. We're investors in a company called Insight Timer. And I'm just going to, I'll just describe it as a platform for conscious abundance. So on multiple levels. So Insight Timer, a place where 10,000 global spiritual teachers, scientists, meditation teachers, yoga teachers come together and interact with an audience of 20 million, about 500,000 around.
Right here.
You have it right there.
I've been a user for more than, 5 years. It's been a while.
That's great. That's great. So from an abundance standpoint, here's a platform that provides teachers the ability to get exposed to a global audience. So there are teachers in 44 different languages, and so they get exposure. The platform also, for teachers, it splits 50% of the revenue with teachers. So there's an opportunity for, for many of these teachers who don't get well compensated necessarily, or treated fairly on other platforms. It gives them an opportunity to work from home and do what they're passionate about, and to create an impact in the world. So that's one piece of the abundance. The other is that the platform has 65,000 free meditations. So when you look at abundance as to how do we make these practices accessible to everyone in the world. That's another form of that's another form. Most meditation apps give you 2 or 3 free days, and then you have to open your wallet. Insight Timer is always free, and you can pay if you want special features, which a percentage of them do. And then in creating that, there's an abundance because Insight Timer's never spent money on marketing. So they've got 500,000 people using it on a daily basis, and that's growing, and that's all organic. So there's the abundance of people like it so much, and teachers like it so much that they just recommend it to other people. And then when all of that happens at the end of the day, as investors, we're going to do just fine. And also the team that's been working really hard on it, they're going to do really well because of all that. So it seems to me that every time there's a touch point, it's always abundance is somewhere there, in that. So I love models like that.
It sounds very interesting. It looks like, I know Insight Timer been on the market for quite a while. I think since the day they started, maybe around 7 years by now, right?
I think more than that.
More than 10. That,
yeah.
Right.
So it's not really a classical fast exit, fast-paced growth company, venture capital unicorn / company. How do you think about it? Do you look at it as a patient capital, or it just for you, it's the way the businesses should grow, I guess, more sustainably?
Yeah, what I like about it, it's not a flash in the pan. It's sort of like a social movement. It's sort of a conscious group of people coming together and in building upon itself over a period of time. What I love about it is, people, I hear stories like you. It's like I've been on it, been using it for 5 years. I think it can become over a period. So five times more meditation on Insight Timer than Calm, which is valued at $2 billion. Every day there's 5 times more meditation. So when you think about the long term for that, it can be a very massive business. But it's not getting there by just, raising a bunch of money and spending a bunch on advertising, which is what,
right,
some other meditation apps have done. And we think that when people get onto Insight Timer, they become part of a community, and they're going to, most people I hear of, it's like once they start, they're on for a long period of time. We're not looking for flash in the pans and making 2 times our money overnight or something like that. But I will say, at the end of the day, I think we're going to do very well financially for investing in the company, and then we'll do it through patience and through supporting the company along the way in many different ways.
What is the return that you think is acceptable or desirable for your group?
Well, I look at it a couple different ways. So our companies are going to do very well financially. We've invested in several. We've invested in 15. Several of them are now valued over $300-400 million. A couple closing in more on unicorn status. But the statistics that I think is most fun for me to talk about is that, we got together 9 years ago and nobody knew of meditation, what meditation was. And on platforms that we've invested in, we can point to 100 million people meditating just on those platforms. So again, we're driven by both impact and financial returns. We have 15 investments. They're all still operating. So we've had no failures in 9 years. They're all actually growing. And, I think when you hold that intention and you support it, we're gonna just do fine. And I don't have a target I don't have a target of saying, we're gonna have a 26% IRR. But on every investment we try to project what the potential IRR would be on the investment, because we think that we want to invest in sustainable businesses. And if we come out with IRRs that are, slightly below what traditional venture would be, that's fine with us. We're not shooting to to absolutely maximize the return on investment. We're more about patient, impact-driven metrics that actually create change in the world.
Charlie, you are such an inspiration for me personally, and I'm sure for our audience, because hearing an investor saying things like that, I would say it means so much to the whole startup community. After when the only questions you usually hear from the investors is how fast you will exit, how will you decrease the cost of goods, right? How will you grow 300% a year? How fast you can burn the money we gave you?
You're like, really?
You know, maybe there is another way of still being a successful investor and at the same time sleeping well at night, knowing that you created good in the world.
I don't know if I can commute. Yeah, I can't compute doing it a different way. Like we have whatever, you know, if you're an investor, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're whatever, we have this one life to live. And like when we get into really saying, what do we want to do with that life? It for most people, I don't think it's, oh my God, you know, I made $400 million in my life. That's what I achieved. There's no one that is, you know, that I think will be happy if that is their metric. And at the same time, you know, I want to have fun in the work that I do. And I just have, I mean, I just have this amazing gift of being able to use my, you know, I've used my abilities to help entrepreneurs to do this. So it's, you know, it's fun, it's rewarding, it's challenging, and, you know, and at the end of the day, there's abundance in it as well.
Right. You worked across 14 different industries. And as far as I know, you were graduated from Harvard Business School. You have a lot of leadership experience, and you chose a while ago the industry that didn't even really existed back then, like mental wellness, mental well-being. I mean, we had sort of like a mental health as a disease treatment, right? But when we're talking about just like health, and right now, you know, all my friends meditate, and a lot of them meditate thanks to the companies you've invested in. So how did you choose, why and how you chose consciousness technologies and mental well-being as the focus?
The answer to that is simple. My wife got me into it. So I'm, you know, I have a passion for innovation and growth and authentic leadership and change. That's kind of what my energy is all about. And I'm really passionate when I'm helping to co-create global movements. And, you know, this is the latest one that I've been involved with, and I'm involved with it because my wife, 10 years ago, introduced me to the Mind and Life Institute, which was founded by a Chilean neuroscientist, a Stanford MBA, and the Dalai Lama, to help bring the science of contemplative practice to where the Western mind would be able to see that there's actually proof that works and helps. And so she was involved in that organization, and you know, she's the social scientist in our family, and she came home from this conference in Washington with the Dalai Lama talking to educators. And she said, you know, this is great. This is an organization that's about science. And I was like, you know, science is not my passion. Entrepreneurship is, but the next conference was going to be in Switzerland and talking about business. And I said, well, I'll go to that. So we went together, and that's how I got connected to the Mind and Life Institute. And my partners had been supporting the organization for a while. That's how I got connected into Bridge Builders. And then, you know, everything sort of happened from that point.
Wow, it sounds like you're in the business of human transformation. You've been also a coach. I see how much you're putting your own, I guess, belief systems and your own passion into this. You're not just putting a check on the table. Talking about transformation, what is the biggest transformation of your life?
Yeah, so I'm pretty stubborn. It actually took 3 forms of death at the same time to get me to, that was kind of my moment of awakening. And that was around 2004. So I'd been working on a business. My business didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. I'd always been successful at business. My father was dying. He was kind of my role model. My grandfather had died 2 years before that. So I had sort of my 2 male mentors in my life dying, and then my marriage, which had been dead for some time, but I didn't realize it. All that happened at the same time. And when And I had a dream one night that I was climbing the World Trade Center, and I knew what I was going to do when I got off. And I wasn't suicidal. That wasn't, but I woke up from that dream and I said, I need help. And that then began to open the door. I went to therapy, I started meditating, I started exploring, and that was really my moment of sort of saying I need to do something different with my life. I'm not happy with the role that I'm playing. I'm not happy, with the relationships that I have, and so that was the beginning of my journey.
Wow, that sounds very powerful and a very strong moment. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of our founders, especially those that are climbing the stairs, the first levels of their startups, the toughest ones, are going through a lot of stress, through a lot of anxiety, and raising capital is hard, building a company is hard. It's a quite lonely path, the way it's been built for the past decade. Can you give them an advice how to not burn out, how to not get sick, and still get to that at least Series A milestone?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've been an entrepreneur myself, and I still am working on what I'll call balance for myself, which is I work really hard in the job that I do, and you have to work hard. There's no question about that. You also have to take time for yourself, and I've seen in different cases where actually from an investor point of view, I've seen an entrepreneur that's burning themselves out, and I'll kind of point it out. If they actually won't take care of themselves, then we probably wouldn't invest in them. So working hard, having the balance, but there's another piece that I'm working on, which is then, so you show up and you do your best. And then at some point you let go, and you trust that with your intention and with your hard work, that a force greater than yourself will find a way to support you and on your journey. And you don't know what the answer of support will be. And I struggle with that because I always want to know, and I want to force my own will. And I think I'm smarter than the universe. And then I normally get slapped around either by circumstances or my wife will point it out to me. So there's a piece, that's kind of like, okay, so, you're pitching investors, but like, if you let go and hold an intention around that, how do you not know that an investor just won't show up, that you don't even know how they really connected to you? There's magic, and I guess there's a piece that there's magic in this. And, I have a story from my own entrepreneurial journey that might reinforce this if you're interested.
Of course.
So I started the first for-profit company, expedition company in U.S. history, to help 2 women cross the continent of Antarctica. And the way that they were going to go 1,700 miles in 90 days across the continent to be the first 2 women to do this was because they had wind sails. So they were, pulling 250-pound sleds from sea level to 10,000 feet. They needed to then ski across the continent and go down on the other side. And Antarctica is the windiest place in the world. And so we, sold Volvo $1 million sponsorship to have the Volvo logo on their sails. And, they would ski, but they also, would pull the wind. And our mission was to use this as a very powerful global event to inspire women and girls on their own expedition. So the expedition started, and they got they climbed up, they got to 10,000 feet, and all of a sudden the wind didn't blow. They were falling behind, and we were concerned that they weren't going to make it across to the South Pole to get, and we were going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to pull them out. And every day I kept, I was getting actually angry at the universe because it was like, why isn't the wind blowing? Like the wind is supposed to blow. So it got to a crisis point, and because of the crisis point, the media started paying attention. So because the wind didn't blow, we were the only thing on CNN during the George Bush, Al Gore, when we were fighting over hanging chads in the presidential election, it would be that story, and then we were the feel-good story because we had, this powerful expedition by these two remarkable women, but it was getting into a crisis. So it was the beautiful thing. One day the wind started blowing and they made like 150 miles in one day. But I couldn't dream of a scenario that could create that. And I was angry at the universe for the circumstances that it created to make the intention actually happen. But because it happened, we were able to get our message out to a lot more people in the world.
That is a beautiful story of trust and believing in a higher intelligence that is behind everything that happens in our life. I'm a big believer that business is a spiritual path. You can't separate the two, especially if you're an entrepreneur by heart. And it's probably impossible to be an entrepreneur not by heart because if you don't enjoy it, there is no point. It's too hard, too much of a struggle. But it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm fascinated that, in 2021, we can be speaking about universe and higher intelligence and meditation. And I'm sure our audience is not freaking out of like, oh my God, what is this religious thing? Like it was, 5 years ago. Even 5. I was giving talks about meditation to startup founders 3 years ago in Ukraine. And people were like, huh? Anna, what are you talking about? Like, are you part of a cult? I'm like, no, guys, it's like neuroscience proven. But that, in my belief, happened because of, thanks to two main things. One is technology and second, media. Where do you think we will see the next big breakthrough? I guess in human development, since we're both in this verticals, thanks to the technology.
Well, it relates actually to what your question relates to our investment thesis. So for the last 9 years, we had chapter 1 of our thesis and chapter 2 of our investment thesis. So chapter 1 was to invest in what my wife, I love her description, described as the gateway drugs. So in order to go deeper in consciousness, you have to have invitations. It doesn't just happen. So chapter 1 is, 100 million people are meditating now, so just getting people to spend 10 or 20 minutes a day to meditate, to calm their minds, to get in a state. I think chapter 2 for us is how do we actually go deeper into transformation and actual behavior change, expanded consciousness and awareness and deeper connection to self, deeper connection to others, and deeper connection to a power greater than ourselves. And so that's what we're focused on now, is how do we provide those invitations for people to go deeper.
Wow, have you seen any technology that supports that?
Well, there's a lot supporting it, actually. The best example that's just crazy that, we're even talking about it now is, the psychedelic field. 9 months ago, there were no public companies in the psychedelic field. Now I think there are 14. And to me, that's not as interesting as the fact that society is now proving by science that that plant medicine, when it's done in a therapeutic setting with the right set and setting, actually can help people to overcome, deep trauma, whether it's PTSD, whether it's addiction, whether it's anxiety and depression. And what's interesting about that to me is that, Johns Hopkins has sort of shown that one of the reasons why that happens is because of the mystical experience that you have. Like, it just blows your mind open to be reconnected with something that you sort of, where we came from a little bit, and to understand we're not just these physical beings, in our bodies. There's something greater than ourselves. So to me, that's a really cool invitation for people to, to connect with something and to have a deeper level of consciousness. I'm seeing technologies, whether that's VR, whether that's technologies in light, whether that's, sort of sound healing, etc. There's a tremendous amount of entrepreneurs now actually digging into these, into these technologies or invitations to go to those, places, and to do it, by yourself or to do it in community. So I think there's actually a lot. It's early stage in many cases, what's happening. And it's remarkable to begin to see the types of more sophisticated CEOs, entrepreneurs. They're not just like, interested in consciousness, they're actually interested in business. So those people are going to be the people that help bring this, into our systems.
I mean, I agree. This is the type of entrepreneurs I work with as well, and it's been a freedom and a pleasure to be able to say no to entrepreneur if they're, let's put it, I guess, limited yet in their perspective of how the world works, what's beyond what we can sense in material world. And it's just amazing that you can develop and remove stigma from the gateways, from those, give people keys in a protected and safe environment to open the doors for themselves.
What's crazy and out there and fun?
I mean, I'm sure you saw there's an MDMA company. It's an alternative to antidepressants. We both know Sana using light and sound to heal pain as a pain relief instead of the drugs that are giving side effect. Another company, I'm sure you saw them as well, Braintap, also using sound and light and guided meditations. In order to do the behavioral change. I actually just got it 2 days ago, started using it myself. Incredible. I would never, ever think that my brain can start instant behavioral changes from one session. I started, just quick share, I started this program for weight control, and I want to make my relationship with food better, because it's always been that, anxiety, snacking, and not really healthy, in my opinion, relationship. And I did one session that was giving me like a back guidance on just like positive affirmations. But you can't even hear it because it's on the background of the front sound. But then I started eating, and I'm like, I don't even want to rush eating, and I don't want to snack. And I want to leave like half of my food on a plate, which never happened before. I was like, it's not my conscious mind making these decisions. This is amazing. Then I'm sure you saw the psychedelic conference that was in New York. That's, in my opinion, is fascinating. And I wanted to ask you if you guys already have any portfolio companies in building something in the space.
Yeah, we've taken a different view. So we've been pioneers in mindfulness. We were pioneers in digital therapeutics, pioneers in sort of behavioral health platforms. And when we got into the psychedelic space, we're not pioneering investors. In fact, there are billions of dollars going into that space. And actually, if there's anything pioneering about us, it's our intention in that space, because from my standpoint, there's a tremendous amount of greed chasing a what I think is our unsustainable models with ancient medicines that have a lot of wisdom tradition about behind them, and the capital is not valuing the wisdom traditions. They're valuing the potential for return on investment. So in the psychedelic space, we've looked really closely at it, and we're trying to understand how can we best support that field. Return on investment, sustainability is going to be very important to us. Return on investment's not going to be as important as, like ROI is not as important. Impact is what's really important for us in that space. So I think, we'll spend our time looking at sustainable models that actually, facilitate healing, transformation, and, and sort of, opportunities for conscious awakening. but in ways where, the wisdom traditions are acknowledged and valued, and in a way where we can really create a sustainable infrastructure that that comes into our society, being reimbursed by insurance companies at some point and accepted by the medical system. So
Right.
the training for therapists, for our perspective, is going to have to be really good. So we haven't made investments, and I'm kind of happy that we haven't, because even though the returns on investment are really good, I'm just not sure yet that it's all going to create something that's sustainable.
You brought up an interesting subject on the fact that even though it's a positive, I guess we can call it technology, right? A medicine, a tool. It's a positive tool. But if it's approached with a pure gain on a return on investment approach, it can become a weapon, and it has actual negative effect on the society. So my question to you is, what would you advise an investor, somebody who is holding a check, right, who has that power, to give this power to somebody else, to the CEO, to the company, to the industry, not to get corrupted? Because humans, we have this weakness. We always have this angel and demon on our shoulders telling us giving us two different voices. So what do you use to strengthen the voice that tells you, no, we're not just going to invest purely for money. We need a sustainable approach. How investor can strengthen that voice?
Let's see. I think the answer to that question would be, I'd invite them to do their own personal work. And when you the more that you do that personal work, the more you can't, the more challenging it is to go back to that old paradigm and just saying, where can I make the quickest dollar? When you do the conscious work, and when you sort of dig into some of the traditions, you then start to ask the questions, okay, what is the conscious level of the entrepreneurs? Or are they just like, this was meant with no disrespect, because actually there's value in having people on these teams from the healthcare system. But are they people that are from the healthcare system that just know how to do healthcare? Or are they people that have had their own deep experience that has led them to say, I want to combine with my healthcare experience with helping people to transform? The second piece would be to ask the question, so what impact are you really wanting to make? So for us, for instance, it's not our intention to create like a consumer model for psychedelics, because while people will have some, great experiences, that won't necessarily create the opportunity for sustainable change, because you actually need support. If you want to transform, you actually need support through these experiences. So we will look for models where the experience is combined with a professional in a setting that actually can facilitate transformation. So I think it's actually, if you're an investor asking the question, it's pretty easy to start getting some of these answers, and they can talk to other investors that have similar concerns. There's actually a group of us that I'm getting more and more connected to that are saying, okay, how do we make a difference in this space? Because we're really concerned about how people are investing so much money in intellectual property in this space, and so little money in the training and development of the setting and therapists that are going to be actually dealing with people when they're in a very vulnerable place. Right.
Yeah, that's a huge area that has to be covered professionally and thought through in the long term, because one thing is awakening, another thing is integrating the lessons from that experience. Charlie, you mentioned that you have 15 portfolio companies. When you look back, and to those who don't know, Bridge Builders Collaborative mostly invests on Series A when the team already has traction. But they also are open to give a quick call and a feedback session to certain founders who are in the space. So if you guys are interested, I'll post the link under this video. You can always go and read the post that Charlie created on Medium and reach out and have a personal conversation with Bridge Builders. So when you look back at these teams, at this founder, Series A companies, what is that one uniting quality that these people have?
Wow, that's a really good question. God, nobody's ever asked me that question. It's such a good question. I'd say openness and curiosity. We work best with people who are collaborative, and we don't have the answers for anyone, but we do have some wisdom and we do have connections. And when we work with people, if they think they have the answer and they need to go sort of prove it, then we wouldn't likely invest in them. If they have a passion, and if they have, and if they have a commitment to their own personal journey, we don't judge where they are on that journey. We look at whether they're willing, to go deeper. Then we think we can add value, to the types of people that are curious, open, and willing to actually receive support versus like having all the answers.
I bet. Well, to all our entrepreneurs out there, you don't have to have all the answers. I know imposter syndrome is real, but you're good enough already. Just know your part, do your part, follow and pursue your passion, and be open to guidance from more experienced people who see from outside of the box the industry you're working on. And of course, one of them is Charlie Hartwell and Bridge Builders Collaborative. Charlie, thank you so much for your time. That was true pleasure and honor, and I hope to speak more with you and do business with you. And if you guys have questions, please drop them under this video and we will get back to you.